those are some work with some of our partners that we worked with over the years and we're still working with. And I just want to welcome everyone to Montreal. Good morning and bonjour. Should be a fun day we've got set up for you. Lots of cool stuff, lots of great technology, lots of great partners here in a great city. I'm kind of celebrating the soul of the city, maybe Montreal, hockey jersey, hockey. And I think you guys are going to get to enjoy some of that tonight, so that should be fun. I'm Tony Clossie. I run the content technology group for Nvidia. Hopefully some of you I've met. If not, I can hopefully get a chance to meet some more of you during the course of the next couple of days. We've got a fun-filled show lined up for you guys. I think what you're going to see today, I'll just kind of paint out a picture of today, and then we'll get into a little bit of the agenda. But I'm going to talk for a little while and give you a feel for the way it's meant to be played, that program. And the GameWorks program that we developed that kind of delivers on that promise. We'll take a little bit of a break, and then we've got a special treat, and then we have 3 really fantastic games that have integrated some technology that you're going to see. And in fact, the folks from the studios are going to present those to you, which is a really a great treat. And then after that, we're going to take a little field trip. And no, it's not where you think it might be. In fact, it's a little bit better than that. We're actually going to go over to Ubisoft themselves and go to the Ubisoft studios, and they're going to give you a tour of their development studio, which is a pretty special kind of behind-the-scenes peek at game development. So that's pretty cool. So thank you very much to Ubisoft for that. And then I think tonight you guys are going to go experience some hockey. So that should be pretty awesome. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. The way it's meant to be played. That is Nvidia's promise to the gamer. It means a lot of things, but first and foremost, it's the promise of a great gaming experience to the gamer. It's kind of built on 3 key pillars. The first pillar being great gaming platforms. And so for Nvidia, that means, of course, GeForce and GeForce GTX, Shield, and a variety of mobile platforms built on Tegra, and cloud with Grid. 3 great gaming platforms that gamers can use to experience games on virtually in any way they want, in the most advanced way that's possible. And GameWorks is our program for game developers. We'll dive into that quite a bit today. We'll spend a lot of time talking about technologies, and you'll hear 3 announcements today that relate to GameWorks. 3 new technologies you're going to hear from us that are part of the core GameWorks technology program. And then tomorrow is mostly going to be around gaming technology. Nvidia spends an enormous amount of energy developing technology to make the gaming experience better. Things like SLI or GeForce Experience or 4K. A bunch of investment in core technology to push the state of the art for gaming and to make the gamer's experience better. The combination of these things, gaming platforms, GameWorks, and game technologies, is what fulfills that promise of a great gaming experience, which is the way it's meant to be played. So that's kind of sets the framework for what we're going to talk about. The focus of today is mostly going to be around PC, and PC is thriving. PC is the most important gaming platform. It leads the way from a technology perspective, and it's enormous. So we put some facts and figures together for you. From a size of the PC gaming perspective, roughly speaking, there's about twice as many people that are PC gamers as there are people in the United States. That's pretty awesome. 600 million or so PC gamers worldwide. That is a pretty enormous installed base of gamers. And of course, the market itself and the gaming industry itself is enormous. From a franchise perspective, huge blockbuster franchises, for example, say Call of Duty, it's done about $8 billion since 2003. The entire Bond film series, every James Bond film made since 1963 is only $6 billion. To kind of put it in perspective with some other major entertainment franchises. That's pretty awesome. Grand Theft Auto 5, for example, did $1 billion in just 3 days. Gaming is huge. From a spectator sport perspective, the LoL World Championships, anybody play League of Legends? Any League of Legends players out there? There's got to be more than 1 or 2. there's like 70 or 80 million League of Legends players out there. The LoL World Championships have 8.3 million viewers. That's more than the Stanley Cup Finals. That's awesome. Gaming is huge. PC gaming is huge. From a market perspective, The virtual currency market for goods is about $15 billion. For us Americans, football, NFL was less than 10. Virtual currency in games is bigger than the NFL's entire revenue. I mean, there's some just kind of mind-boggling statistics here. And then we spend a fair bit of time doing this stuff. The top 20 games, 13.5 billion hours played in the first quarter alone. 13.5 billion hours played. That's about 3x all of Netflix. So gaming in perspective to say watching movies, playing some sports, as a spectator sport, or as a market and an economy itself, is a truly enormous and thriving business. And we love it. It is the soul of Nvidia. It's how Nvidia was born. It's where our passion is. And it's where we invest most of our technology and effort is in gaming and PC gaming. Kind of the embodiment of a lot of that investment is the GameWorks program. GameWorks is, our vision for GameWorks is really to be to the game industry like Industrial Light and Magic is to the movie industry. Help the developers create truly amazing and stunning experiences. Things which just blow people's minds from a visual perspective and which are incredibly compelling from a gameplay perspective. And there's kind of 3 pillars of that program. The team itself, the GameWorks research team, is about 300 visual effects engineers and artists. These are the world-class experts in their domain. They invent algorithms, they help developers implement amazing effects, and in fact we have some of the best people in the industry that are helping the developers push the state of the art. Kind of the product that they produce, the embodiment of a lot of that research in terms of algorithms and SDKs, is the GameWorks library. And we're going to spend a fair bit of time talking about today, so you have an understanding of what it is, why we do it, and some of the technologies that we developed for it. And then you'll see this during the course of the day, a bunch of games that have integrated a lot of that great technology into their games. And of course, if you're developing games, these things are incredibly complicated. Games are some of the most complex software development on the planet. Millions of lines of code often go into building a world-class game, so you need truly world-class tools. And we're going to actually give you a little demonstration of some of that today as well, because we have an enormous investment in world-class tools that enable developers to do truly amazing things. We've been doing this for quite a while. As you're probably aware, Nvidia has been investing heavily in helping developers for more than a decade. We work with all the great games. We work with all the great developers. We just want to create a great gaming experience because that's great for the market, it's great for Nvidia, and of course it's great for the player. Everyone you see up here works with Nvidia. We work with all the major players, and every game that you see listed there has integrated some Nvidia technology. We invest more in working with game developers than anyone on the planet. I can say that without reserve or with any question. It is an enormous investment for Nvidia, and we do it because we care. I'm a gamer, and I'm a hardcore gamer. I play probably more games than like my family would like. But it's our passion, and most of the people that work in Nvidia on this are passionate gamers. They care about this stuff in a deep and passionate way, and they steer their entire education and career toward being able to advance it. I mean, it's in our soul, it's in our blood. I'm going to rattle through 10 or so games that we've worked with. The first few of these are not probably going to be particularly new for you, but I just want to give you a sample of some of the games that we've worked with and we're working with to give you a little flavor. They span the range from first-person shooter to strategy. So Hawken, for example, great developer up in Seattle, really pushing the state-of-the-art, free-to-play, kind of fast-paced first-person shooter mech combat game. They've integrated physics in a really deep way. They're working on destruction, which will actually change the way the game plays. Great partner of ours. Borderlands 2 from Gearbox. Great game, GPU physics all over the place, won all sorts of awards. Super fun game. It has a nice kind of irreverent sense of humor. Really, really great game. I'm sure a lot of you guys have spent a fair bit of time on that. PlanetSide 2, kind of a mass combat PvP game, bunch of physics. Squad versus squad, 3 sides. I'm a Vanu, so if anybody plays PlanetSide, don't shoot me. It happens a lot. I'm not that good at PlanetSide, unfortunately. Great game, and Sony's been a great partner of ours for years. We've worked with Sony in a wide variety of games and technologies. One that you might not have heard of, or one that you might not be aware of, is we're working with the folks at Slightly Mad on Project Cars. Fantastic game. Incredibly realistic, beautiful visuals. Probably going to be the most advanced car racing game done on the PC, and probably one of the most visually stunning games ever. We actually have that game running in the back, so at a break you can check it out. We got Project Cars running at 4K. Really cool game, and they're integrating a bunch of Nvidia technology as well. Really fun developer, really pushing the state of the art, and actually innovative on the business model side too. The folks at Gaijin with War Thunder, great flight sim game. If you guys haven't had a chance to check out some of the trailers, you really should. They're integrating our WaveWorks technology for large-scale water simulation. Stunning enhancements, and they're going to do some enhancements for 4K as well. Another game from SOE, EverQuest Next. Now I don't know about you guys, but that was actually one of the first games that kind of really hooked me on the PC. It's actually one of the first games, EverQuest 1, was one of the first games that literally required 3D acceleration. So we kind of have a soft spot for them. And I can probably regale you with a bunch of crazy tales about life in EverQuest 1. I'm looking forward to EverQuest Next as much as almost any game. Really groundbreaking vision, really aggressive ideas about kind of rethinking the way the MMO universe is. So we're really proud to be working with them on integrating a bunch of Nvidia technology right into EQN. And of course, Smedley's been a great partner of ours for many, many years. Star Citizen, Chris Roberts' new game. They're going to integrate a bunch of core Nvidia technology. The game looks stunning. And how could you not like truly stunning visuals in a space combat flight sim? I mean, I think we're all looking forward to playing this game. We've got that running on 4K in the back as well. So if you want to check out Star Citizen in 4K, we've got a build of that running. So that's pretty cool. And then as an extra special treat, you're going to see 3 really stunning games today. One of them is going to be Batman Arkham Origins. We've enjoyed a really great partnership with the Batman folks and Warner over the years. This year is no exception, and I think this year we're pushing the state of the art on Batman further than it's ever been pushed before, and it's just got a panoply of amazing Nvidia technology in it, and the game itself is just stunning. AC, Assassin's Creed, one of the most important franchises in gaming. AC4 Black Flag, who doesn't want to be a pirate? Who doesn't want to run around and on a ship, blow people up, be a pirate? And we've really helped work with UV to push that really beyond the state of the art, really creating a next generation experience. You're going to have a great show and tell from Ubisoft on this one as well. And we've got that running on 4K in the back as well. And then Watch Dogs, one of the most anticipated games out of E3. You're going to get a chance to see Watch Dogs, have them placed through some of the game for you. We're working with the Watch Dogs folks from UV to integrate a bunch of core NVIDIA technology. Really awesome stuff. And you're going to see a presentation from them today as well. So a bunch of fantastic games, a bunch of games that are still in development, still to come, all integrating a bunch of core NVIDIA technology. Super awesome stuff. In many ways, we're blessed. We've got some of the best partners on the planet that have the vision and the drive to help push the state of the art, and then we've kind of got the technical horsepower to help them do that. So it's really a great partnership. We really like that. So, by the way, I failed to mention this, and if you guys know me, if I'm talking too fast, tell me to slow down. I get a little cranked up, and maybe a little over-caffeinated too. That might be part of the problem. And if you guys have questions, I'm happy to take them at any time. You don't need to hold them to the end. If you don't understand something I've said, or you want me to clarify something, just raise your hand. Let's try to make this an interactive thing as much as we can. We're here for you. We're here so you understand the vision, you understand the goals and the technologies. So at the end of the day, you feel like you got something valuable out of this. And I'm sure it'll be the same tomorrow. We've got a really powerful 1-2 punch for you. So like I said, if you've got questions, just fire them away as they come. If I don't see you, raise your hand. If I don't see you after that, throw something soft at me or something so I notice. So it's all good. All right, so GameWorks. GameWorks is NVIDIA's developer platform. It's our way to push the limits of gaming on all the platforms that gamers care about. Windows, Android, cloud, you name it. And there's 3 main pillars of the GameWorks program. 3 core pieces upon which this platform is built. The first, of course, is the people. We are lucky to have the world's best team focused on games and game technology. The GameWorks research team is about 300 people. They are, many of them PhDs, world-class experts in their domain, visual effects and visual engineers and artists that are at the intersection of art and science. These people have to develop algorithms and libraries and technology that produce amazing visuals and amazing gameplay, at the same time having to solve for incredibly complex technical challenges. And all of that needs to have an artistic feel to it. Graphics is an incredibly difficult field in that it's science and engineering and art. And people who have that skill set are really, really rare, and we have 300 of the world's best. And we use those people to help game developers create those next generation experiences. We take a lot of that learning and we embody it in the GameWorks library. It is our collection of tools, SDKs, technologies, algorithms, engines, source code, technology that we provide to game developers that they can use and write on to bring things to the next level. And we're going to walk you through that in quite a bit of detail, and you're going to hear about 3 new technologies that are part of the GameWorks library. And then, of course, in developer tools, with the Nsight IDE and standalone debuggers, profilers, and utilities, we've got the world's best tool platform for doing graphics and game development. You're going to see some demos of that today, including some new things there as well. So, you know, we've got a lot of stuff to show you, and I don't want to spend too much time talking because there's a whole bunch of great demos. So let's kind of get into it. So, what's in the GameWorks library? There's 6 major components in the GameWorks library. These are kind of the major sections that we deposit our knowledge into so that the industry can leverage that to advance the state of the art. The Visual Effects SDK, these are turnkey solutions to solve complex visual problems. They are typically delivered with an API that developers program to, and these would be tools and technologies that are producing complex visual effects. For, you know, as an example, and we'll get to this, Waveworks would be an example of a visual effects SDK piece. The graphics library is kind of some foundational material. These are things like tutorials, libraries, samples, documentation, sample code, things that are the fundamental building blocks of building a great game, and graphics are reposited there. PhysX SDK, you guys are familiar with. We've been building that for quite a number of years. That was originally part of AGIA. We've integrated Nvidia. We continue to invest in that. It's cross-platform. It's the most popular physics engine on the planet. More than 500 games have integrated it, and it literally exists on any platform that a game developer cares about. From phones to consoles to PCs to cloud. It's everywhere. Our core SDK includes a bunch of foundation technologies for using GeForce and other platforms. You may have heard of things called like NVSI and things like that. These live in our core SDK, and these are things that can take specific advantage of NVIDIA platform features, and it lets developers get kind of the full benefit out of NVIDIA. The game compute library is kind of analogous to the graphics library. Everything that the graphics library is for graphics, the compute library is for compute. Source code, documentation, tutorials, you know, the fundamental building blocks of understanding how to do computing. And then optics. Optics is an SDK for building ray tracing engines. It's a framework upon which developers can use to build their own renderers and create amazing visuals with them. So let's kind of dive into one of these, and this would be developer tools. We have an enormous investment in developer tools. You probably have heard of Nsight. That's our IDE. That's actually a screenshot that you see up there. That's Nsight. Really, the way to think about it is we cover all the major functions that a developer needs for graphics and on other platforms, even including CPU and graphics simultaneous debugging and profiling. So we have an IDE and a standalone environment, so you can build in, say, Visual Studio, the common environment for developers to work in. You can debug your code to make sure that the issues that you've written in, you can figure out and write out. Profiling, so you can get the most performance out of the game. So this would be things like, you know, if I'm vertex shader bound or fragment shader has, you know, extra cycles, you can tune it down to the nth degree. And this exists across all the major API platforms: DirectX, OpenGL, ES, CUDA, Android, Windows, you name it. We've got tools that cover all the major platforms and all the major APIs, both integrated and standalone tools. So what you're going to see, in fact, is a demo that shows kind of the breadth of this. So let's go ahead and go to the demo. And what Sebastian's got running here is one of our visual effects SDK examples. This is FaceWorks. You guys have probably seen this before. So this is our digital IRA here. Now what he's running here is FaceWorks running on a PC, and he's going to be attaching Nsight to it to do some debugging and profiling. So let's go ahead and hand it over to Sebastian here.
Thanks, Tony. So here I'm going to demonstrate to you basically how to peel a frame worth of rendering in FaceWorks, which is a technology demo for facial rendering and animation. So here basically by scrubbing through the frame, using the head-up display, I can essentially debug this frame one draw call at a time and understand where things are happening and how they're happening. So if I were to have a bug, for example, in my subsurface scattering shader here, I can easily focus on it, go into Visual Studio, this is Visual Studio 2012, and easily basically dissect the render space and the resources that are bound to this particular draw call in order to understand what's going on here. As an example, I can quickly focus on the frame buffer here, bring basically the data for the frame buffer, and I can inspect the pixels value here by hovering my mouse over the various pixels. And you will see basically the RGB value being updated in this section here, where those are actually floating point values, because this is HDR rendering for the subsurface scattering. Now, what's is interesting is that this particular solution is available on our next generation Tegra platform, which is called Logan, and we're going to switch to.
So if you guys, can I get my mic back? Yeah, awesome. So if you guys haven't seen it, this is Spaceworks, which is one of those core visual effects SDK libraries running on Project Logan. If you're not familiar with Project Logan, that's one of our next generation Tegra SoCs. Project Logan implements the full Kepler GPU architecture as well as a full support for OpenGL. So this is Spaceworks running on a Logan dev kit, which is in a break. You can come check it out here. It's a little Tegra-based SoC, runs in single-digit watts, and it's Spaceworks running on Logan. So that's pretty cool. Logan's pretty exciting because it's really going to usher in kind of the next level, so to speak, for mobile technology, because really it brings Kepler, our core GeForce architecture, to mobile, and we can bring things like Faceworks to mobile as well. But this is not just a Faceworks running on Logan demo. If you want to develop next generation graphics for mobile platform, you actually need to have tools that work with them. So how are we going to deal with that, Sebastian?
Well, we offer a variety of solutions on Windows, Linux, and OS X to be able to allow developers to get connected to their Android device and do basically debugging. So here I'm going to show you under Linux how we can connect to the Logan dev kit and basically connect to the process we want to debug. Here we're going to see a bunch of performance graphs, but I'm going to go straight into the frame debugging mode that you've seen basically some of the spirit within Visual Studio. That same technology is now available, in Linux, on Linux, Windows, and OS X to be able to debug basically your OpenGL rendering on Tegra. So
I just want to point out real quick that you notice the toolbar doesn't look like Windows here. This is running on Linux.
Right.
This is developed tools running on Linux. And when we say we care about any platform that game developers care about, Linux is a platform that game developers care about. So here is graphics tools running on Linux. And when SteamOS ships, we'll have tools that support SteamOS as well. So we're not kidding when we make Mac, Linux, PC, we support all the interesting platforms. So this is the same graphics kind of capability and tooling you saw before running on Linux and connected to a Logan dev kit if you want to do Android or Logan development.
So here in real time I can again scrub through the frame, being able to basically analyze what's going on, and as I find my bug or I try to find basically a draw call that is suspicious, I can then focus on it and then basically select some of the rendering states that I want to inspect. Here I'm going to again go back to my render target that I showed you on Visual Studio, and here again I can inspect the value. What is also interesting to note is we collect also for specific resources all the variations, basically the instant within the frame where this particular resource was changed. So here basically you can see that this specific render target has been affected in all those draw calls, and I can easily basically navigate to each of those draw calls that ended up modifying this render target.
That's pretty cool stuff. So that's graphics tools on Windows, graphics tools on Linux or Mac, debugging DirectX or OpenGL on any platform, on any target. We have an enormous investment in world-class tools, and here is the tooling capability that you're seeing that enables Say you want to be a Linux developer, but you want to target Android. We enable that with our tooling technology and Insight. So pretty cool stuff. Thanks, Sebastian. Any questions on that? So that's tools. And there's some new stuff there, so if you didn't catch it, there was tools running on Linux, tools for OpenGL, tools for Android development, developing OpenGL, targeting an Android, the whole kit and caboodle there. So awesome.
Are you importing a 3D model for that, or is that pulled from an engine?
So the question is, are we importing a 3D model, or is that pulled from an engine? In fact, that's attached directly to the engine or the game running in real time, and we can essentially debug it and profile it live. And you can iterate it live too. So you don't have to do any kind of weird model import. That's attaching directly to the game and the engine at runtime, so you can profile it at runtime. Good question. Okay, cool. All right, so next piece, PhysX. So you guys are probably familiar with PhysX. It's our physics SDK. It's the most popular physics SDK on the planet. It's used by hundreds of games, more than 500 games ship with it. Simulation-driven effects, things like turbulence or rigid bodies, some of the core mechanics that affect the gameplay. It's integrated into pretty much all the major engines. So Unity and Unreal Engine, for example, some of probably the two most successful or widely adopted engines, their physics system, the core physics system that drives Unreal Engine and Unity is PhysX. And you're going to see some of that integration here in a second. It's on pretty much every platform you've ever heard of. Every major console, all the mobile platforms, all the PC platforms. It's on Linux, it's on Mac, it's everywhere. We have PhysX everywhere. And we have probably the best authoring tools for physics. In fact, we've actually had some partners of ours want to switch to PhysX, if for nothing else because our tools for doing authoring are really that great. So it covers a wide variety of simulation domains, things like destruction, infer, clothing, core rigid bodies, GPU-accelerated particles, turbulence for simulation of fluid-like effects, actual fluid simulations for things like waves and water, a wide range of effects. We're going to just show you, a little example of that, which is some of the PhysX effects that you're going to see later today with Batman. We're going to actually show you how some of those are authored. So what we're going to show you, in fact, is doing some turbulence authoring right inside of Unreal Engine, right inside of the editor. And this shows you how integrated PhysX is in the authoring pipeline for game developers. So let's go ahead and switch over to Jem's demo here.
Thanks,
Thanks. Take it away.
Yeah. Mic's on? Yes. As Tony said, we have deep integration inside all the major engines, including, of course, the Unreal Engine. And what we're going to show you here is this is a simple level we've designed just to show off the effect. We have a little physics particle emitter on the ground here inside of this little object on the ground. And we're going to start with this simple scene where you've got these kind of boring particles. They are actually, there is a bit of physics going on here in that there's interactions. But as you can see, the actual, what's happening in terms of actual physical effects here is just moving up at some constant velocity. So it's kind of boring. One of the things that we've integrated into a number of games, including Batman, is this thing we call turbulence, which is a real fluid simulation, which is a much richer and more interactive and interesting simulation that you can apply to particles. So what we have inside of the Unreal Engine, and actually before I get into that, I want to show that this particle system that I just talked about is actually inside of the, it can actually be edited directly inside of the Unreal Engine. So you can go in here, for example, you can open up these different parameters that we have, and you can play with, say you wanted to change the colors of this physical simulation. You can go in there and, hey, let's make it really red. You can do that, and it actually changes in real time. So you've added a red tint to it. All right, let's undo that, and show you some turbulence effects. See, this is not, I'm really doing this, as you can tell. So, okay, so as we said, let's make the simulation a little bit richer. So what we can do is we can actually move this. See this large grid we have here is actually a turbulence actor that you can place inside the scene. And what that does is it actually applies an actual turbulence fluid simulation or layering grid fluid simulation to the particles that enter it. Right. So we have an emitter now emitting particles. There are no forces in the scene, so what we can do is we can then add a jet to actually inject forces, and then you can run it. And as simple as that, all of a sudden you've got a richer interaction. Now, one thing that's missing though, the rendering, there's no shadows, and there's no shadows within the smoke. So wouldn't that be cool? So what you can do, this is also directly integrated inside of the Unreal Engine. You can open up the parameters for the actual emitter. Say cast opacity shadows, which is this new technique we call PSM, which is part of the GameWorks library, which is a deep shadow mapping, particle shadow mapping effect. You can adjust some of these parameters because actually it turns out that this grid is a little bit larger than the default parameters allow for. So we can change these the parameters of the shadow map, go right back into the level, and now you've got real shadows, and you can actually play with and get real interesting turbulent effects. Just automatic. And so all these things are built directly into the Unreal Engine, and it's part of what we provide in the physical SDK inside the GameWorks library.
That's pretty cool stuff. So that the nice thing about that, of course, is that because they're integrated right into the core authoring pipeline of the engine, those are GPU physics tools and capabilities that are just inherent in the way game developers can develop. And you're starting to see that in that there's more and more games that are taking advantage of GPU physics. We had quite a few games this year ship, both here and internationally, that use GPU physics. Turbulence is one of my particular favorites because when we first envisioned turbulence, we kind of envisioned it for these kinds of things. Smoke, right? You know, kind of smoke effects and fog. We've had developers just go crazy doing amazing things with turbulence. You know, they've invented disintegration rays and explosions and all sorts of really cool effects with turbulence, which we didn't envision. And that's really the best thing, is when you've built some technology that allows the developers to kind of go crazy and get creative with it and do things that you never even thought of. That's pretty cool. Now, one of the challenges, of course, with pretty much all physics simulation, and really the history of physical simulation, is that while you can build really cool simulation infrastructure for a wide variety of things, you can do SPH for fluid, you can do 3D volume simulations for things like smoke and turbulence, you can do GRBs for rigid bodies. A lot of times, a lot of those core algorithms aren't as elegantly integrated as you might like. And so combining some of those things can be sometimes complicated. We've been working on that for quite a while. And so one of the things we're announcing today, one of the new pieces of technology that is going to be integrated into physics next year is called Flex. We're really excited about this because it's a unified GPU physics system. Really, for the first time ever, it's going to provide a way for a wide variety of simulations, effects, to interact with each other. A unified solver supports two-way coupling so that different simulations can influence each other. A fluid simulation can influence rigid bodies and vice versa. Shared collision detection between all of that infrastructure. And the great thing about this, it turns out that this unified architecture happens to also be incredibly great for parallel implementation for GPUs. So it gets incredible benefit across parallel GPU architectures. And it's going to provide a really great building block to enable a huge new class of GPU accelerated physical effects and really complex cross-simulation interaction. So let's take a look at some of the things that Flex can do. It's pretty crazy stuff. So the first thing I'll say is, this is technology. It's going to be integrated into physics sometimes next year. So this is the first time we've shown it. It's research, and because it's research, it's a little programmer arty. But I think you'll agree that it does some pretty cool stuff. So what Jem's doing here, these are semi-rigid bodies. So you get kind of the bouncy balls, and they interact with each other, and they kind of squish and compress. Typical rigid bodies don't tend to do that. So you get this kind of bouncy ball kind of effect. So one of the nice properties about this is you can build shapes and objects that you classically couldn't build with some of the other primitives. You can build flexible, squishy things. So I mentioned that we have the ability to combine simulation infrastructure, and they have two-way coupling. So what we're going to do now is combine a rigid body simulation with a fluid simulation. So you can see the rigid bodies, they interact with each other, they bounce into each other and collide. Now we're throwing in water and fluids, the water displaces the rigid bodies float around and splash around, they continue to collide into each other. And you can see this is super high performance, it runs super fast, the water's fast, the rigid bodies are fast, and all the rigid bodies kind of do the right thing. They collide, they stack, they move around, they float, they splash. So this is kind of showing a couple of those effects, right? Two different classes of classic physical simulation, rigid bodies and fluids, interacting with each other in a truly seamless way. These kinds of things are classically hard to do, but in the new Flex system, they just all kind of work. So if you can do rigid bodies and you can do fluid, well, let's see, maybe you can do clock. So of course you can do clock, and you can combine clock and fluid. Again, just taking a lot of these classically separate simulation methodologies and allowing them to interact with each other, and you get the right effect. It just kind of works. One of the really cool things about a lot of this stuff is because it's this unified system, we were able to build all these things and like literally just play and experiment. We just try things out, and it just works. The interaction works out the way you think it will. The visual effects and the interplay between the simulations all play out nicely, and they all play great on the GPU. So this one's kind of fun. This is we just kind of call it the squishy frog. This is a deformable. Classically, doing rubber or deformable kinds of objects in geometry has been pretty hard. So this is a deformable object. This is a little frog guy. You can move around. He squishes, he deforms, he bends, and it kind of all does the right thing. So that first sphere demo that you saw, we first did that. We thought that was pretty cool. And then we started playing around with water, and then as is usual, what happens is we'll show it around, and then this time I was the guy to blame. Like, you know what? That's pretty cool, but the first thing I think of when I think of spheres and then see water after this, hey, could we make water balloons? Has anybody ever seen a real-time water balloon simulation? And they're like, I don't know, well, let's try. So literally, they whipped it up, and it turns out that you can make water balloons. It all just kind of works, right? So you've got balloons, they're filled with water, there's pressure, they react, they pop holes, they leak, they squirt. You can just have the simulations work how you think they should work. They bounce around with each other. Depending on the hole that you pop, sometimes they rip open, sometimes they squirt a leak. It just kind of all works. And this is not like a demo we set out to build. This is something that's enabled by the Flex technology that allows people to be creative with it. We just tried this out, and it turns out, and you know what, you can do that. You can actually have a semi-rigid body with clock and with tearing and with fluid interaction and with pressure all just work. So, we kind of saw this working, like, you know what, you could probably do a pretty fun little game just throwing water balloons or splashing stuff, or, then of course, then there's the other side of it. It's like, now I can imagine characters being built with fluid inside, you shoot them and stuff happens, and, we're in the game industry, right? And, I want to have people explode and have, I'm sure we'll have all sorts of, fluids squirting out of characters anytime soon now. So this is pretty cool. So the last one we're going to show you, it's just because we can, frankly. It's just we're kind of showing off. This kind of combines a whole bunch of stuff. Fluid simulation, fluid rendering, water, splashing, rigid body, soft body, interaction, mass, kind of the whole kit and caboodle. There's foam and spray in the water. And this is just, because it all works, we just can. You can pick up the objects, they have mass, they splash around. When you drop them, they displace the water. We can go ahead and splash the whole thing around, and you get waves and turbulence, and it all flows, and it just all works, and you get foam and spray, and it's how it should be. Right? This is pretty exciting stuff. We've had a bunch of guys working on research to solve. These are kind of, particularly if you're a game developer and you had to do physics systems, and you have to have physics systems that work with each other. It hurts your brain a lot. It's hard. These are really complex problems, and having some core fundamental technology that can allow this level of cross-simulation interplay and this level of realism it's pretty cool stuff. Pretty exciting stuff. So I can't wait to see what folks are going to do with this next year. Pretty awesome. So this is Flex. This is one of the first technologies we're announcing, again, coming to PhysX next year. That's the stuff. You can kind of play with that all day. All right. So, optics. Some of you may have heard of optics before. It's an SDK for building primarily rendering engines that do ray tracing. It can be used for a wide variety of things. It can be used for building ray tracers to do ambient occlusion, to bake into light maps for games. It can be used for real-time ray tracing. You might have seen our Design Garage demo, and there's a bunch of folks that are building real-time ray tracers out of optics. The highest performance ray tracers on the planet, in fact, are built on optics on Nvidia GPUs. It can be used to do high-quality rendering on procedural surfaces. The folks at CCP, in fact, for EVE Online, use optics to do character portraits for the game, all using optics. And something you might not have known is that optics is used actually as part of a lot of game developers' core pipeline. It can interact with and play with, and it can be used to be a building block to help produce great games. So the folks at Bungie, you might have heard of these guys, they're working on a little game called Destiny, which you might have heard of. They're in fact using objects to author content for Destiny. They're building ambient obscurance, it's kind of a form of ambient occlusion, basically doing global illumination, pre-calculation for Destiny using objects on Nvidia GPU farms. You know, you've probably heard Nvidia say that, you know, lots of game developers use Nvidia GPUs. But you might not know that they use Nvidia GPUs in ways you might not have thought about. They don't just use them as game engine development, they use them as actually core authoring for their game itself. So there's a GPU farm at Bungie that's cranking away, calculating ambient obscurance. You can compute AO on a really complex scene in a little bit over a minute on this GPU farm. Orders of magnitude faster than the alternatives. They bake it out for use at runtime so you can basically simulate real-time global illumination in Destiny. And the fact that they can do this on Nvidia kind of just as a testament to that, the strength of that core technology, the value that we're bringing to the game developer industry. They're taking some of our core technology, they're building tools themselves, built on technology that solve really important problems. It's pretty cool stuff. So we're really excited to be working with the Bungie guys on Destiny. And they, by the way, this, if you're curious about this particular technique, this was presented at SIGGRAPH Asia by Peter Pike-Sloan and their crew from Bungie. It's a pretty interesting technique, again, built on top of objects. Pretty cool stuff. So one other kind of technique that we use is for ambient occlusion is called horizon-based ambient occlusion, or HBAO. What this is a technique for doing real-time detailed shadows as a form of ambient occlusion. It's been integrated in a huge number of games. It's a highly optimized library for doing AO. It scales across a wide range of GPUs. It runs on Nvidia, it runs on AMD, and it's kind of a fundamental building block for doing lighting in games. It's been integrated into a bunch of games that you can kind of see up here. So let's go ahead and see kind of a before and after here. So this is a traditional kind of scene that you might see. This is kind of, I'll call it old school ambient occlusion. The challenge here, of course, is that particularly in the car, you're not getting a lot of the soft edges that you might get in real life with a higher quality AO solution. So with horizon-based ambient occlusion, you get much more of that soft effect. So particularly if you look underneath the car, kind of the old school effect tends to produce these hard edges. And in fact, ambient occlusion in real time is I'll call it an approximation of a true kind of full-on path trace solution. And so it's not going to be as accurate as a fully baked solution, but it's because it's done in real time, it can interact and characters can have it and that kind of thing. So in this case, it's a car. So if you look at the wheels, you get a little shadow bleeding onto the tire. And with ambient occlusion, you get kind of that soft feel around it, which is typically what a diffuse shadow would have. So that's one of our kind of cool technologies. So let's take a look at what this can do in real time. So let's flip over to the demo. Oh, you've got it up already. So Jem, if you want to talk to it.
So what we have here is a tool we have that basically allows you to visualize the effects of the HBAO library on a variety of game scenes from a game. So this is a scene actually from Splinter Cell Blacklist, and the mode we've started this off in is kind of the traditional SSAO mode, which basically what happens with AO is that you do a search around the pixel that you're currently looking at and try to look for the occluders that are nearby. And the larger the search area, the more complex the algorithm is, and the more difficult it is to compute in real time. And so what you end up getting is, as Tony showed in the previous slides, you don't get a lot of the things that are further away or larger occluders, like the bottom of this car, don't actually produce shadows, right? So what we can do with HBAO is you can actually increase what we're calling the radius multiplier here, or the radius of the search space, basically, and get a lot of interesting AO effects that capture these larger, further away occluders. And we also have a number of tweaks that artists and designers can play with in designing the parameters for our AO library. For example, the detail AO level, where you can, if you jack this up, you get a lot of the fine details like the door handles and things like that. Or if you're looking for a more coarse solution because, say, some other shadow technology inside your game handles the details, you can dial this down and have AO just handle the coarse areas. So it's very flexible, it's very fast, it's fast on all GPUs, and it allows you to have really high quality results, as we see here.
So one of the other really cool things about not just this technology, but kind of the way we work with developers is we build tools that let developers play. So this particular tool we can just grab a trace from their game. They don't have to go and integrate a bunch of code in their game. We can just grab a trace from the game, take the current game, grab a trace, bring it into this tool, and then they can play around with it. And they can decide whether AO is going to work for them or HBAO is going to work for them or not. They can tweak with it, they can fiddle with it. So before they decide to invest a bunch of time coding and doing an implementation, they can just check it out.
Right.
This is another great kind of capability that we provided them.
Yeah, and you can see the final frame here as well. So this is without the AO effect and with the AO effect, and you can play with it here in the final frame as well.
Pretty cool stuff. So are there any questions on AO? Yeah, okay, it's okay to clap. Any questions on AO, any inclusion, horizon-based any inclusion? That's one of the kind of core pieces of our technology that's been adopted kind of all over the place. It's got the kind of double benefit of it's the highest performance, ambient occlusion, and the highest quality. And it's not often that you can do that, but that's really testament to those rocket scientists that we've hired, the GameWorks researcher guys, that they've been able to invent an algorithm that is literally the best in class on both vectors, performance and quality. All right. So one other kind of technique that we've been working on, of course, is contact hardening shadows. If you're not familiar with what this means, in the real world, when you have an occluder and a light source, the shadow that gets cast typically is hard-edged near the base of the object, and as the shadow gets away from the object, it gets to be more diffused or soft-edged. That's typically called contact hardening shadow. So we have a PCSS implementation that we've been working with on a variety of games. It provides a lot of that kind of next level of shadow detail, particularly for direct light sources on things like trees or chairs. And so you can kind of see it here. As it's close, the edge is hard. As it gets soft, it kind of fuzzes out and blurs out. Same thing with the chair there. You get the pole. And I don't have a laser pointer, but right here it's soft, and right there it's hard. These are techniques that we've developed. They're delivered in a form to a developer that they can just easily integrate them. They can try them out if it's going to work for their game. And they have the extra benefit, as Jen mentioned, is they are the highest performance implementation. So just a little example of that, if you take PCSS or HBAO, not only are they the highest quality implementations, but they're the fastest implementations. And they're the fastest not only on Nvidia, but we actually improve the performance of the alternative implementations even on AMD. This is the kind of thing that game developers love. Because in the end, they just want their game to be great, right? And if you give them the highest quality solution that improves their frame rate, it either means the game can run on a wider range of hardware, which is just good, or they have more time or more CPU or GPU cycles to put more effects in the game to make the game look great. So these are just nothing but win-win for everybody. Great visuals, great performance on everyone. Any questions on that? No? Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay. So the Visual Effects SDK. So I kind of alluded to this a little bit before. This is our library that kind of embodies a really complex visual effects. These tend to combine simulations and rendering, animation and simulation and rendering. Oftentimes they involve non-traditional rendering techniques, things like voxels or ray marching or ray tracing. Much more complicated implementations. We build these as kind of turnkey solutions to solve those problems for developers so they don't have to do all that research. And because we have the guys who are really the experts on how to do super fast GPU implementations, we're able to kind of extract the absolute best performance out of some of these cutting edge techniques that really other people can't afford to invest that time in. I think most game developers would rather spend their time making a great looking game and making a great game than trying to solve parallelism and register pressure and cache sizes and all the super low level nitty gritty. Some do. But I think most just prefer the kind of the convenience of taking a great effect and integrating it right in. These are also multi-platform, as you saw before. Baseworks was running on PC, then it was running on Android with OpenGL, cross-API, cross-platform. And we'll deliver these on any platform where they make sense or anywhere the game developer kind of wants to make use of them. So I think we got a little bit out of order here. Yeah, I think a slide got flipped, but that's right. One of the effects that's in that Visual Effects SDK is GI Works. So this is another new technology that we're announcing. It stands for Global Illumination. Global Illumination is kind of that, that next level, so to speak, of realism for rendering. What it does is it computes essentially indirect light. The traditional rendering for games is direct light, meaning a light source casts light on the object and illuminates that object. But the light classically doesn't bounce. The way the developer typically solves for that is they pre-calculate global illumination. either using optics or other techniques, and then bake it into the textures or the shaders in the environment so that you have an effective global illumination. The disadvantage to a technique like that is that it isn't dynamic. So when the world changes or when you destroy something or you add a light source, it's often difficult or impossible to have the updates to that indirect lighting happen. So we've been working really hard on developing a super high performance library that allows real-time global illumination. The other benefit of real-time GI is that if you build your game around real-time global illumination, your artists don't have to spend so much time cheating. One of the big pains of game development is lighting. And you have to be quite a sophisticated artist to get really good-looking GI, global illumination effects, without actually really having global illumination. So they'll place hundreds or thousands of lights in their scene because the lights don't bounce, and so you have to do stuff like that. Whereas if you could implement GI in real time, it would just do the right thing. Light would bounce, you get the indirect light, you get the color bleeding. So what we built is a scalable architecture that enables that, and it's super high performance. So let's take a look at what GI Works can do.
Okay, so this, what we're starting with here is direct lighting in this scene only. So direct lighting, we have two lights in this scene. There's one up here and one down here, this blue one. And basically all the lighting that happens outside of these two cones is just a flat ambient term, right? So you can see it's very flat over here. You don't see any detail in these arches and in these hallways. So let's go into the direct lighting plus indirect lighting now, which is, these lights were already there in the scene, but you didn't see them because there was no bounce that's happening, as Tony explained. So now what you have is, let's flip back and forth to give you a good idea here. These arches are a great example, right? There's no light falling on these arches directly from the light sources. So what you need is indirect lighting, which is light that bounces off of a surface and then lights another surface to get light to go into these areas. And there's a number of really interesting effects that are enabled by this. One is, since this is a completely real-time effect, you actually get real-time specular or glossy reflections, which are entirely indirectly lit, right? This is just light that's falling on this surface from this emitter that's on, these emitters that are on these little TVs in the hallway. And specular is notoriously hard because it's inherently dynamic, right? Because it's dependent on the viewer. It changes based on how your view angle changes. So you see that the specular is done entirely correctly. Other things we can do here is that we can add area light sources. So these little these boxes that these dino bones are in are actually area light sources. And so looking at this Triceratops here, you can see that there's a really, really high quality ambient occlusion type effect. And this is a notoriously difficult sort of shape to get real ambient occlusion on using screen space techniques. You can see here that you have really great ambient occlusion, all sourced in real time from this area light source. And another thing you can do, we can actually move these lights around. So this is in the lower left, what you're going to see is basically the view from the light's perspective. You can move this light, or you can move this other light as well, which is the blue light here. And one thing you'll get as you move around this light, you see the cone of influence basically that the light has. But even things outside of this cone of influence, like look at this archway back here. Let me get out of this one to get closer so you guys get a good look here. If you look at this archway, there's actually the extent of the light ends right at this boundary of the spotlight, right? So if I move this light, you can see that the lighting is changing inside of that arch, even though no direct light is falling on that surface. So that's entirely because of the bounce that happens off of the floor. The light bounces off the floor and hits the arch and adds light there. So yeah, that's global illumination.
So leave it up there for a second if you don't mind. So GI Works is a GI library that we're working on. You'll start to see this integrated into games, I think, probably next year. The advantage to this is it's implementing a bunch of incredibly complex volume-based lighting techniques to simulate all this bouncing of light that is necessary for the indirect lighting effect, and it's fast. It's possible to implement this on a GPU. It runs cross-platform. The nice thing about it is that it's even possible to author your game entirely with an indirect lighting approach, which could be quite a breakthrough for the game development community, so they wouldn't necessarily have to be placing hundreds or thousands of lights to fake all of these indirect lights. You get some really nice effects out of it, as Jen mentioned. You get the bounces, you get the specular, you get really accurate reflections, you get kind of a built-in ambient occlusion. Kind of all just kind of falls out. It's one of the beautiful things. And I think it's not, I don't know if it's a theme, but we talked about a unified physics simulation where the simulations can play with each other nicely. One of the nice things about global illumination is it's a more elegant solution, and then it solves a bunch of the fundamental problems of lighting and shadow. They all just kind of fall out of it. It's computationally really complex. The algorithms are really complex, but the results are visually great, and it solves a bunch of those fundamental problems. And that's what we're really about, kind of pushing the state of the art visually, and if we can, not only make the result more beautiful, but make the game developers' lives easier and better. So that's GI Works. That's one of the other technologies that we're announcing. So, one of the other classically really difficult problems in gaming has been nice fire and smoke. Classically, this is done usually with, I'll call it texture tricks. It can be done with sprites and billboards. It can be done with a bunch of alpha blended quads. There's lots of ways to do this kinds of thing. But the challenge with pretty much all of the existing approaches is that they tend to not really be correct from a volume perspective. And again, it's one of those things they don't really, there's always a side effect to those things. Either there's a lot of overdraw, which is really performance expensive, or you've got blending and sorting issues or things like that. So we've worked on a solution we call FlameWorks. What this is a volumetric effect engine that allows for things like smoke and fire to be done essentially the same way they do it in film. Except it's ultra high performance. It can be done in real time. It supports shadowing, you can emit light, and it uses it's a multi-grid volume-based solver to produce some really stunning effects. So FlameWorks is kind of one of that third, as I alluded to, 3 technologies. There's Flex, there's GI Works, and there's FlameWorks. So let's go ahead and kind of take a look at what FlameWorks can do. And yet, remember, this is all kind of running in real time, and it's kind of one of those volume-based effects that solve some really complex problems. What Jim's showing here is it is actually a true volume. There's no sprites, there's no layered quads, there's no sneaky particle. It's a true volume-based solution. It's emitting light, as you can see. It's shadow. It interacts with geometry. It's actually a simulation. So the fire flows around the sphere and kind of behaves the way you think it behaves. This is the same type of effect and technique that they use in the film industry for doing things like smoke and fire. I think that was cool. I can't wait to see this again. So I think you'll see FlameWorks integrated into games starting next year as well. In fact, we've already started integrating this into core engines. That's just, I don't know, that's just cool. All right, any questions on GI Works or FlameWorks? Yeah?
What type of method is used in GI Works?
Yeah, so
is there SVOGI or?
Yeah, so the question is, what type of method are we using for GI Works? He mentioned what we call SPOGI, sparse voxel octree global illumination. It's related to that. It's not that same techniques, but it is a volume-based approach. We manage the data structures differently, and we have a bunch of other, I'll call it techniques. But it's related to that approach. One of the disadvantages of the SPOGI style approach is that it was quite a bit more computationally intensive and incredibly memory intensive. And we've addressed some of those. Any other questions? Okay, cool. All right. So we kind of walked you through. Oh, yeah, there's a question. Yeah, sorry.
I was just wondering with the FlameWorks, I guess with your Flex, do you have like any interaction between, like, say, the water and fire?
There's always one guy. So I think the answer is that it could. The Flameworks technique is a volume-based, primarily rendering technique, and it does there's a simulation behind it. I don't believe there's any reason why it couldn't interact. In fact, that's a good. We should go check that out. Now, I'm pretty sure that we haven't figured out yet how to have simulated water actually extinguish our simulated fire. We could kind of, we could think about that. yeah, that'd be cool. And then, of course, when you do that, there'd be a lot more smoke. But yeah, so right now, those solvers or those SDK examples aren't fully integrated. We haven't quite got the one, integrated, unified theory to solve them all yet. But I guess the idea is we're kind of heading in that direction. We're trying to get things which interact with each other in a cleaner way, and which are more correct, both visually correct and simulation correct. Along the way, if you can solve all those really hard problems, you actually solve a bunch of really hard fundamental game developer problems. You don't really want to have to do crazy work to make rigid bodies work with fluids. You don't really want to have to place 1,000 light sources in a scene. You'd rather it just kind of all fall out and work. And that's the direction that we're headed. We want to advance the state of the art, produce beautiful visuals, and we want to do it in a way that helps the developers. So that's kind of where we're heading. Any other questions? I saw Brian running around to Mike, so I don't want to make sure I don't miss anybody. This is cool. You can ask any question. We've covered a lot of material, by the way. We've covered tools, right? We've covered optics, we've covered GI, we've covered Flex, we've covered Flameworks, we've covered a bunch of stuff. Any questions on any of that? Okay, cool. All right. What are we doing on time? We're pretty close. Okay. So to wrap it all up, what is GameWorks, or what is the GameWorks library? It is our collection and kind of our embodiment of our work. It's a collection of SDKs and libraries that developers can use to kind of advance the state of the art. Visual Effects SDK, you saw a couple examples from that, GI Works and Flameworks. The graphics library, you saw some examples from that, things like PCSS and HBAO. Physics SDK, you saw some new technologies there, things like Flex. We didn't really show anything from the core SDK, but these are, again, things that allow developers to take advantage of things that are unique to GeForce or our platform. Things like NVAPI to control monitor settings, or VSync, or maybe SLI profiles, those kinds of things. The game compute library is kind of the analog for the graphics library. Again, fundamental primitives, building blocks, tutorials, sample code for doing compute, in CUDA, DX compute, GLSL compute, and then optics. We showed you an example from Bungie that they're using to work with Destiny to bake ambient obscurance in for doing some detailed lighting. So a lot of technology built into GameWorks, and really it's a testament to the GameWorks researchers, those 300 guys that are producing some amazing, amazing work. So that's the first part of today. That's kind of the warm-up, so to speak. We're going to take a little bit of a break, I think a 15-minute break, if that's right. I think it's a 15-minute break. And then we're going to come back and we're going to see some amazing games, some games that have integrated some of that amazing NVIDIA technology. So feel free to mill around if you've got questions. I'll be here. There's a bunch of NVIDIA people here. So go ahead and take a 15-minute break, come back, see some awesome games. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Denis. So my name is Sylvain Trottier. I'm associate producer on Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. I'm in charge of the next-gen version, the companion app, and the connected experience. And this is awesome Alex. Alex is my lead engineer for the engine, the 3D team, and the tools. So you're going to see our presentation today is quite different from the others. We're not showing really a demo, because what we have here is the final game. So Alex is going to play and show you the game and the look and feel of everything I'm going to talk about. So my talk is more about all the technologies we're using in the game, what we did to build the next-gen world. And Alex there is showing you the 4K version of the game. So that was not my part. So I'm not going through, these are not my slides. So I'm not going to go through all the story of the game, because we already did a lot of talks about this. We already did a lot of journalist reviews. So this is a quick summary of the game. So it's an open world. You're playing Edward Kenway, which is the ancestor of the Kenway that you know from AC3. He's a pirate, first and foremost, and he gets very quickly into the war between the Templar and the Assassin and embrace the way of the Assassin. This is what our game is talking about, is telling the story. So like I said, my speech is about building a next-gen world and what we did, what are the decisions we took, and what we did to try to to make the game very next gen. For us, next gen is not only like PS4 and Xbox One, but it's also, of course, PC. So these are the challenges and the breakthrough that we had to go through that in this game to push the bar and to make AC4 a real next-gen title. So this is the biggest AC world so far. So Alex could stop this and show you very quickly. That's where he is right now in Havana. And if we move back, this is the entire world that we have to support. So all this is an open world. It's all like, it's a living open world though, so it's like full of activities, full of people to meet. Of course, it's a traditional AC, so it's all about like a true historical context. So it's a really gigantic world, and we wanted to make sure it was always fun to be in there. Another important feature of the game is the seamless transition between land and sea. So for us, it was a technical challenge to do this, to make sure that the player can, at any time he goes with his ship, he can dock, jump in the water, get on the island, explore the island without any loading, and then come back in his ship and continue his adventure in our world. So it was super important for us to do this. Yes, we tried to minimize all the loading sequence. Some cities like Havana that are gigantic do require loading, but most of the time you're going to find that we did a pretty good job at minimizing the loading times. Another important feature since the pirate game, it's the dynamic boarding. So every time you see a ship at sea, if you decide to attack it, you can. And once it's damaged enough, then you can go and do a dynamic boarding where the two ships get together. There's a dynamic nav mesh that is being built up. You can jump from your ship to their ship, fight everybody on board. Your NPCs, your crew are going to join you in this battle and jump on the other ship too. So it's pretty cool for a pirate experience. And last and not least, we are used on AC franchise, like it always looks super good. So for us, it was like, we need to take this, push the bar even more, and make the AC franchise, the AC4 game, increase the visual quality to be able to fight on the next-gen market, and of course, push also the bar at the same time on the PC market. So the way we worked on this project, all the next-gen tech that I'm going to show you there is like, they were all built on PC first, because the next-gen consoles now are so close to PC that we always use, like we have the same type of PC across Ubisoft. We have HP 420 PCs with Nvidia cards all the way across. I don't know how many of that we have, but I think we have something like close to 4,000 PCs just in the Montreal office. So, and yes, we have power issues all the time. The power outlets are breaking. So I'm going to walk you through a few of the techs that we worked on. So dynamic foliage is the game taking part being in the Caribbean Sea. You have lots of trees, you have lots of plants, you have lots of beautiful places. So dynamic foliage is something that we thought would bring a really next-gen touch. So this is like the current gen version that you have on 360 and PS3. So we saw a lot of posts on the web. People wanted to see side by side. I'm going to show you. You have a preview because we never did that before. Side by side of current gen and next gen, and this is the next gen version. So you see that there's a lot more foliage. And I can go back and forth. So you see the trees, you see on the ground, and all this foliage is really like, it's reacting to our dynamic weather system. It's reacting to the player interaction. It's true for foliage. It's true for plants, bushes, trees. So this is one of the key next-gen tech that we developed on PC and then ported on next-gen console. Another one is the improved rain and wet surface. So this is on current gen, so it's regular rain. It's already looking very good, but once you get on next gen, now we have 3D rains. So the rain is independent. It's all the particles are independently lit. So if it's closer to a light source, it's going to take the color of the light source, and we can have like puddles that are being created as it rains. And it reacts also to the wind, so when it's really windy, you see like the movement. You're going to see it later on once we're going to tell you, we're going to show you there. Alex is going to turn on the cheat in the game because it's like, and we're going to show you like the dynamic rain and the wet surface, but this part you won't be able to tell. Parallax occlusion is like, it's a nice sexy thing that you can add. So these are the current gen rocks, and this is what we do with it when we go in the next gen. So they just like look more realistic. It's always the same goal. It's always to push the immersion, always make sure that the game is like, makes you feel that you're really part of the Caribbean Sea. So screen space reflection. So what you see there is the current gen version, and then we have the next gen, which bring, like, once again, more realism, more realistic visuals in the game. Volumetric flag is a technology that is exclusive to next gen and PC. We don't have this on the current gen, so these are a few examples. Raf, our art director that is sitting there, would probably say that the guys push it too much, but it was just to show that the tech is there, that it takes that is affected by the lighting, by the color, and that it can create a super crazy ambience in the world. So after that, I'm just going to go through rapidly to a bunch of other next-gen improvements that we did in the PS4 version, Xbox One, and the PC version. So lighted particles. When you are on your ship and you shoot at night, you see like all the smoke that is being like affected by the cannonballs. High resolution texture, of course, this is like a given. We needed this in order to support 4K, for example, but it was already, the game was already like all prepared and ready internally just to support 4K. HBAO, I'm going to talk about a bit more after that on this. And improved shadows, same, I'm going to talk a bit more later. And a bunch of improved post effects. So we have motion blur, we have a depth of field that is more cinematic look, a lens flare effect, God rays. So when you look at the trees and the forest, it's super nice looking. So these were the common part between next gen and PC. After that, what we did is that we worked very closely with Nvidia to do PC improvements only. So the next tech I'm going to show you there are only available on PC. The collaboration with Nvidia has been going on for years with Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed franchise. And the way we work with them, it's super easy. It's honestly, I don't see how it could be easier. The guys, they send us very talented engineers. They come on site, they work hand in hand with our 3D programmers. They do like all the stuff that is PC specific that we want to push together with them, and it's always giving up a very good result. So I'm going to give you a few examples. So this is a HBAO plus. So right now what you have, so if you look at the arrows, it's always where it's easier to see. So this is with no ambient occlusion. We never have this in the game, even on the current gen version we don't have it. This is more of the current gen version, so you see that the ambient occlusion that kicks in. And after that, on PC only, we have HBAO plus, so we can move from one to the other. So you see that it's always, again, about, Ben was saying before, it's always about little details, little like polish that make the game sexier and more fun and more beautiful. After that, improved soft shadows. This is the current gen version. This is a screen grab from the 360 version. Then we have the next gen version, so you already see like the shadows that are getting like more precise, more realistic. But wait until you see the one that we have on PC. So it's like the level of details. Once again, it's incredible. Other effects that you can see once you're going to play the build are MSAA, TXAA, that is also, like, as you know, exclusive to Nvidia cards. Improved God rays. We have the code of the God on the PC version. We have the God rays code of Nvidia, and of course, last but not least, the 4K resolution. So if you want to see really the game in its like real beauty, you really need to take a look at this. You really need to take a look at all the details. When you look at the palm trees and all, like, you see there's so many pixels in the screen that when you look at all, you can see through the leaves of the palm trees even at a long distance. So this is what Alex is showing right now. So just a quick conclusion. So AC4 will deliver its promises. We've been saying since day one that we wanted a fun, massive, and seamless open world. We really think we have it. We had a lot of time to polish it. We were like, this production went very, very smoothly for us. It was a very fun production to be working with. And we also think that, well, you're going to judge by yourself, that we were able to deliver a truly beautiful next-gen game. That the technology choices that we made, we think that they were the good ones. So right now, what I'm going to show you is that, okay, so do you have the video also after that? Okay, so these are a few screen grabs from inside the game, so I'm going to go very quickly through that. And after that, I'm going to show you something that we never showed to anybody outside of our walls. is I'm going to show you a quick, it's a 2-3 minutes video that the engineers put together using Nvidia GPUs. Like it was in March, and it was like to showcase to our exec what are the next gen technologies, how we want the game to look and feel on the next gen platforms and PC. And so we put together this video, and yeah, it was never shown. I'm going to show you where exactly we have it. So here you're going to see like God rays. The resolution is not super high, it's not a 1080p video because it was made already like it's an internal video only. So you see dynamic foliage. So with this we were able to remove like the animus effect when Edward is hidden, because you don't need it, you really see that you're hidden. Here you have translucency in the sails are reacting to the wind strength. Like you see God rays, you see, so it was really like pushing the visual limit bar, and a bit of volumetric fog, lens flare effect, defocus with the depth of field. Parallax on the leaves when it's raining so that it looks like droplets. You're going to see it also later on in the faces of the character. 3D rain, particle effect, and volumetric fog. So you also see the wet surface, like the water reflection on the wood. Storms are pretty amazing. Once you get like the Beaufort level very high, it's like the boat is getting very hard, the ship is getting very hard to drive, and the look and feel can be, especially when you get the, how is it called, not the twister? What's the real name or the thing? This, don't help me, right? Whatever, not a hurricane, it's really like a twister. Water spout, thank you. So yeah, you're gonna see the clutter, like where he's walking and it's all moving with him. The clutter is also reacting to the wind. We ended up not doing it on the ground. This is pretty cool. When you see like the cannon shots at night like that at dawn, it's very, you also see the cannon shot reflection usually on the water. I don't know if you saw it. So